Hello, Abigail here with the astrology of this week. This week starts off with a bang with a full moon in Aries. I will do a longer video on it, but the important parts are is at 11:45 p.m. EST. It is going to be at 14 degrees of Aries. When we have full moon, it's Sun in the transiting sign, so in the seasonal sign. So we have our lovely Libra Sun, and then the opposing oppositional moon in Aries. This is also a great moon for a lot of reasons, but we finally have a Mars rulership that is happy, Mars and Scorpio. So keep a lookout for that video. But then the next thing that we encounter is Mercury entering into Scorpio that same day on Monday. And it's a very different vibe from Libra. Libra is about balance and how things are presented and making sure that there is some form of regulation on language and understanding. And it can be quite litigious. It can be very, there can be a lot of information shared, but there's also thought going into how that information is shared and how it will be received. Mercury and Scorpio, not so much. Mercury and Scorpio is dark and angsty and poetic and rich in meaning. It suppresses things. It likes to hide a little bit. It likes to communicate with more than just language and words, and it's less about understanding and more about the feelings that we associate with communication and how we respond. It can be a bit reactive and in a suppressive way, but it's a much needed palate cleanser from kind of the ease at that which Mercury moves through Virgo, where it's like double rulership with domicile and exaltation, and then Libra, where while it's not nothing special, it's still in an air sign where it moves fluently, and then into this water sign where we dive into the depths, into understanding feelings and emotions, and um, the recognition that we can't know everything or understand everything, and that language has limitations, and there are some ways to communicate that don't require spoken word, that don't require openness. Not everyone wants to be understood or needs to be understood. Not everything has to be. And so we're moving into this kind of Mercury energy when it comes to that. It is a nice break though, because everything doesn't have to be functional. Everything doesn't have to be clear, but what we feel in our instincts and our reactions become very important when it comes to our communication. And also, this is our lead up into the Mercury retrograde that is coming in Scorpio season. So keep an eye on that. We're going to hit that shadow period pretty soon. And it starts off in Sagittarius, retrogrades back into Scorpio, and then will be on its way into the winter. But yeah, it's quite different, and it is quite angsty, and it feels very necessary in this moment to kind of get some underground time with Mercury versus all this kind of up in the air ass out time. Then on Tuesday, because everything passing into Scorpio now for the next 18 or so years, is going to go into a square. This goes into the same square that we had with Mars last week. So Mercury and Pluto are going to be in conversation in kind of a restrictive, frustrated, progressive way, because we don't get progress without squares and oppositions and things like semi squares. Trines and sextiles are nice, but they're not built for moving forward. They're built for comfort and ease and understanding. Squares are the challenges and the places where we find the most growth, and honestly, where a lot of literature lives. A book about only happy times would not last very long. We need challenge and overcoming and resistance in order to progress through life and to appreciate and enjoy stories. And so we have this square. I think the square is also going to be a moment of recognizing the feelings and processing what has happened through that Mars square previously. For a lot of us, that it hit pretty hard. Especially if you had anything in other fixed signs in your own personal chart, that Mars Pluto squares a lot. Thankfully, it's separating. But that Mercury moment is about understanding. It's also about expressing frustration, recognizing the limitations of things, the understanding that we have when it comes to Pluto topics. And, I think it's going to feel pretty tricky because there's going to be this desire to know. And this Scorpio path, especially this year, is a lot of unknowns and a lot of Pluto themes, and then we're going to hit those late trines with Neptune and Saturn. And we're going to end up with our other, other like oppositions with the place where Uranus is headed. It's not there quite yet, but there is still this tension with where the planets have been, because nothing just kind of happens like a lightning strike in astrology and leaves. So a lot of themes from early in the year are going to be coming up. A lot of those themes from the spring are going to be resurfacing. Um, Mercury in Scorpio is a lot about kind of digesting and sitting with and processing and turning things into a language or a response or an understanding. And it's going to be a bit delayed. And so know that that is the kind of vibe at the beginning of the week. We're going to get this nice release with our moment, but right on top of that release, Mercury instantly goes into conversation with Pluto. And then our final kind of moment of this week, there's not a whole lot happening. A lot of it's kind of this spinning towards other parts of the cosmos as we kind of head towards these things with all of the retrogrades of the outer planets. A lot of it is us grappling with these huge themes while a couple kind of more internal themes are continuing to set off these kind of chain reactions. In weeks when there are even fewer things happening, we have more like kind of bullet points. It's extra important for you to go check your personal chart to see where it's being lit on fire. And I'll say if some of this stuff doesn't resonate, or I say one week is going to be simpler or feel better and it doesn't, go check your chart. That simple astrological week could be very complicated in the context of the day you were born. Anyways, the final dealio this week is kind of interesting because we have this kind of release in Aries, this fiery, passionate, volatile sign where there's going to be freedom. It's also our first non-eclipse lunation in Aries since 2023. So we get this lovely, free, released full moon that is not adjacent to the nodes, the lunar nodes. And then, in contrast, at the end of the week, this little final bullet point, we have Venus opposed Saturn. And it causes this tension of connectivity and the rules that we function under and our desire in relationship with the structures we are battling with. Also, Saturn and Pisces kind of work in mysterious ways. It's not always obvious the work of Saturn in a water sign like Pisces. Um, it can often take us on quite a journey to interpret and understand where things are coming from. Also, don't forget that Saturn and Pisces is a lot of innovation when it comes to things like tech. It's a lot about things like surveillance and kind of being watched without knowing it because we can't get quite a handle on what is happening with systems in the depths of a water sign. And so Venus in opposition really throws up our relationships in high relief to this moment, to the people who are showing up for us, to the people who care about the injustices going on in this world, to the people who don't see eye to eye with us, and us grappling with how to maintain community connection within the context of so much division and hatred and cruelty that is so widely accepted. And what you do with people who you love, but who refuse to recognize harm. Um, it's also about grappling with late stage capitalism and how difficult it can be to maintain friendships if you are exhausted and depleted and kind of at the mercy at the systems and the powers that be and the structures that have been set up that um, you didn't have a say in the starting of, and you may or may not have made the right decision even if you did. There's no way to know what you would have done if you had been setting up these systems, but we do know that they don't work and that they are often cruel and usually, well, not often, always violent because they were not meant to protect and help. They were meant to accumulate as much property for very select people as possible. And they were also meant to rob and steal land and things like that. So there's a lot of kind of grappling going on with this Venus opposition with Saturn and knowing who we are and where we are historically, societally, how we want to build community and friendship moving forward while staying true to um, our needs and sense of self, especially with this very Virgo Venus that is in detriment. How do we maintain things when there are necessities that need to be met that we might not get met? And, are there friends we need to check in with? Are there people that we need to regroup with? Saturn also kind of reminds us of what we've forgotten, especially in the underworld and the underside of things. And so, it can be both a benefit to remind us to reconnect, and also can be sad to see the ways in which we have become disconnected or forced into disconnection by systems and structures and things like that. So, that is the astrology of this week. I wish you a very beautiful, inspiring full moon in Aries. Like I said, look out for that other video. Will be coming pretty shortly after this one. And I will see you in a different space and time.